Hi guys, I am Stephanie of the Simple Classroom. Thank you so much for checking out my video. Today we are talking about all things observation anxiety. So if observations really freak you out, then this video is for you and you are not alone. I'm speaking from experience. They freaked me out for quite a while. So today I'm sharing 5 things with you that I think will help you kick that observation anxiety to the curb. Stay tuned to see what they are. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel, comment on it, share with me on social media your thoughts, and let's get started. So my first unannounced observation ever was a complete disaster. And that is not an exaggeration. It was really bad. It was not my first observation. I had an announced observation in the fall of that year. And like any good first year teacher, I had kept myself at school really late. I had lost sleep worrying about it. I had absolutely just total anxiety about this observation. And then it came, I was over-prepared for it. I had thought of every potential mistake that I could make. I had pored over the rubric and made sure that I had worked in evidence of every single thing on it. And it was fine. It was a fine observation. My unannounced observation was late in the spring. I think I was one of the last ones. And we were just doing test prep. I taught 4th grade reading that year. We were departmentalized and I was the only reading teacher. So I just taught reading over and over and over again throughout the day to the 4th graders. And at that point in the year, we were only doing state test prep, primarily out of a workbook that my school had purchased and our principal had asked us to use. So the fact that I was doing test prep wasn't ideal because it was kind of like I sit at your desk and work in a workbook and let's discuss lesson. But that wasn't the problem. My principal wasn't even bothered by that because again, she had bought the books and asked us to use them. It was the fact that that particular lesson that we were working on was a review of quotation marks, which was a 4th quarter standard. So we actually hadn't learned about quotation marks yet. I was teaching it for the first time in the midst of this workbook lesson, which is fine. But I had not really reviewed what was correct and incorrect with quotation marks. So this particular question had like 4 sentences with quotation marks and commas in different places. And there were a couple that I could immediately eliminate as like, that's not the right answer. But there were 2 where the comma was placed outside the quotation marks and the comma was placed inside the quotation marks. And I was in my mind like, I'm not sure what's right now. And in any other lesson, if my principal hadn't been in there, I would have just casually picked up the teacher's manual and double checked. But for some reason, my nervous teacher brain, who was not really accustomed to my principal being in my room yet, I was like, I can't pick up the teacher's manual in front of her and make her think that I don't know. So for whatever reason, I just guessed. And I guessed wrong. And then because I had guessed on that one, I felt like I needed to stay consistent with my answer. So I went on for like 3 other questions that were similar to tell the kids the wrong answer multiple times. Like, oh yeah, it's C. Oh yeah, it's D on this one. Remember we said the comma goes here? And I can't remember which one I said now, but I said the wrong one, whatever it was, over and over and over again. I followed the same rule for each question. So the kids ended up, I told them that we all got 100s on that because we were doing it together and I was giving them the answers. But really, they probably got like a 50% on that assignment that I was guiding them through. So bad. My feedback from my principal was like, she didn't even meet with me. She just stuck a bunch of copies of past standardized tests and highlighted any question about quotation marks and then highlighted the correct answer and printed out like, she went so far as to copy the teacher's manual page from the workbook that I had, which yes, I should have read it before the lesson, but like we were just in hard and fast test prep mode then. And my lessons were honestly, most of them was like we were doing the workbook pages and I was reading the teacher's manual along with them. But in some like crazy lapse of judgment moment, I decided that holding the teacher's manual in front of my principal was a bad idea. So after that, of course, I got these bad scores. I got this bad feedback. I was like shaky and nervous about even walking by her in the hallway for weeks after that because I was like, she thinks I'm an idiot. I am an idiot. Why did I do that? And I decided going into my next year of teaching that if I was going to go on having observations, I did not want to live like that. And I needed to find a way to embrace the stress of observations and compartmentalize it in a way where I could work through the steps and make it not a stressful thing, and just make it where any day is an observation ready day, and it doesn't matter whether my principal walks in or not. So, full disclosure, my husband is out there doing yard work right now, so I apologize for the extra noise. I tried to time it to where I wouldn't be doing this while he was cutting the grass, but as luck would have it, here he is. All right, so here are 5 things that I think you can do to prepare for observations in a way that make them a lot less stressful for you. So here we go. The first thing that I think you need to do is shift your mindset to believing that you're good. And that sounds so silly and okay, lame first one. But really, in all seriousness, if you think about your next observation, does it make your heart start to race? Do you feel panicky? Do you feel like, oh my gosh, I hate observations. I don't want to even think about the next one? Why? I remember talking to my teammate my very first year, and I was so stressed out about the impending unannounced observation. I had been stressed out about the announced one, and she was just kind of like, I don't get stressed about observations, which I was annoyed about because I was like, well, why not? They're stressful. And she said, because I know I'm good. And if I know I'm good and I'm teaching well, then there is nothing that the principal is going to see that is going to make her think any differently. I'm just good. And I carried that with me for forever. I was like, man, I kind of need to be like a diva like that. I just need to walk around and be like, I'm good at this. And then the principal believes it. My husband has absolutely no observation stress whatsoever. He does not get worried about them. When I ask him about it, he's always like, I'm good. So what is the principal going to say that's going to change my mind about that or make that not true? Now, I don't think that you just need to walk around as a first-year teacher who's never done this before and just finally be like, I'm awesome and no one can give me any feedback. I do think we all need to be open to constructive feedback from our administration, but I don't think that we need to live in fear of having someone watch us. If you're super stressed about someone watching you, think about why. Is there an area of your room that you're struggling with that you're like, I don't want it to be pointed out. I already deep down know that that's really bad. My classroom management is not where I need it to be yet, and I don't want anyone to come in and see it. What is the area that you could put a little extra work in and get it to that place that you want it to be and rip that anxiety out at the root? Because if you can do that, then you're golden. If you stop stressing about whether or not someone comes into your room and you knock out that thing that's making you self-conscious about someone watching you, then you will get a lot of sleep back at night and life will just be happier for you. So, tip number 1, change your mindset, figure out why you're so anxious about someone watching you teach, and fix that thing. So the next thing is steps 2, 3, and 4 all bundled into one, because my next piece of advice for you if observations cause you a lot of anxiety is to treat every lesson like you're going to be observed. And I don't mean write out a full script. I don't even do that for observed lessons. Please don't write page after page after page. Whatever you did in college, your principal does not want that. I've had it expressed to me by so many principals. They're like, I don't want to read that nonsense. Do not write out 8 pages for me about your rationale. Now, I say that, maybe you have a principal who's very directly expressed that they want that. I have had 4 different principals in my teaching career, and every single one of them has told me that they don't want that. They want it condensed to 1 page. So if you need to condense it to 1 page, then you can plan every lesson, even if it's just in your head and you don't write it out. Every single lesson can be observation ready, so that when observation day comes, it's just like, well, I was already teaching this way. I will continue to teach this way tomorrow. I'm ready for this. And you don't have to pull a late night or an all-nighter stressing and worrying about, is my room ready for all of these things? So this is what I think, steps 2, 3, and 4. This is what I think is king in an observed lesson. Measurable objective. Make sure you know in every lesson that you teach, approximately how many kids in this class do I think will get this on the first try? And if they get it on the first try, what's my next move? For the kids who don't get it on the first try, what's my next move? Have a goal in mind where I'm trying to reach 85% of my kids because 15% of them are in RTI, and I know that I will have opportunities to work this back in later, and I don't expect them to get it on the first try. It's not developmentally appropriate for them to get it on the first try, but that 85%, I expect after this lesson that my targeted exit slip about this skill, they're gonna get it. Or I expect at the end of the week with our reading test, that 85% of those kids are gonna get a 90 or higher, or whatever it is. Have that idea in your head. Sometimes your district or your school will set that for you. The RTI model has made it where It's kind of set for us. My district, the magic number was 85%. 85% of your kids should be getting what you're teaching in class. 15% of them, you should expect that you're going to have to say it more than once, because that is what they're processing it. That is what their previous educational experiences that may not have been as high quality. They may have moved around a lot. They may have been pulled in and out of school depending on their home situation. You'll have that 15% where they're not ready to grab it the first time you put it out there. But you should have an idea of like approximately how many kids are going to grab this. You may not have to write it out. I mean, I was at a point where my district wants me to reach 85%, so that's what it is. That's like an easy 85% of these kids should get it. Then have an assessment in mind. How are you going to know if the kids got it? Again, is it an exit slip? Is it an end of week test? Whatever the case may be. Always be working towards that assessment. Design the assessment first, or pull the assessment. Maybe it's like a curriculum assessment, but design your assessment first to match your standard directly so that you know when I'm teaching this lesson, I'm setting the kids up for success. I'm not just blindly pulling random read-alouds and activities all week about main idea, and then I'm going to give them this end of the week main idea test from my program that doesn't match anything we did. Like, make sure you're not, like, that's torture. That would be so mean. Make sure you have the assessment in mind. That's that backwards design stuff. Put the assessment in your mind, teach to it, and not like a bad pedagogy kind of way where you're like, we're going to read a passage and answer comprehension questions that are modeled directly after this, but in a way that you're using the same language, you're using the same vocabulary, you're asking them to identify text evidence in a similar way as the test, or you're having them work equations and word problems that are similar to what they're going to see. Prepare them for what they're going to be assessed with, for sure. Always have an assessment in mind. The third thing is have some evidence of differentiation at the elementary level, which I'm an elementary teacher by trade. A lot of you watching are probably elementary teachers. Small group is where a lot of that differentiation is going to come in. So make sure your small groups are always defined. I doubt that you go into teaching and you don't know which kids are in which small groups and you don't know what you're going to do with them in those small groups. I just doubt that that happens. So if you already know that, then like you're way more observation ready than you have ever given yourself credit for. Because the other things that are on your rubric here in Tennessee, we have the team rubric and we have stuff like problem solving, feedback, student grouping. We have all of these other components that are not just your standard and your objective are stated and known by the teacher. You have differentiation, you have an assessment. There's definitely more to it than that on your rubric. But all of those other things show up when those three things are really clearly defined. So in my opinion, my professional opinion, based on my experience, if you know those three things for every lesson, the feedback stuff is really easy to work in. In your small groups, have the kids give feedback to each other about a writing prompt or a problem that you just worked. Your grouping is already done because you already have them in small groups for differentiation. Problem solving can be worked in to small groups based on the small groups that you have. Questioning, asking different levels of questions based on the different groups that you have in front of you. All of that stuff just naturally falls into place. And I think that if you focus on the meat and potatoes of your lesson, those three things, the other things just kind of show up. And you don't have to work so hard to plan for it. If you know it's an announced observation, you probably will stop and think about like, what kind of levels of questions do I want to ask these different groups today? Awesome. If it's an unannounced one, at least you have what you need going on to get good scores, if not great scores, depending on your comfort level with your content knowledge and how long you've been teaching this. But focus on those three things and you'll be good every single day. Finally, 5. So we had 1 was believe you're good. 2, 3, and 4 were measurable objective, assessment, differentiation in every lesson. So it doesn't matter if the principal is in there or not, you're already ready for them. The 5th thing is reflect. When you have your principal come in, and you should be reflecting in all the time anyways, you should always be looking back at data. But if you can write it in a sentence on whatever lesson plan documentation you turn in after an observation, it's gold. We have language for this in our rubric, and I think a lot of teachers skip over it. But if you can write a reflection piece as like 87% of my students scored a 100% on our exit slip today, so we will be moving forward in the content and moving to the next lesson tomorrow. Or 73% got a 100 on the exit slip, which did not meet my measurable objective for this lesson, so we will be repeating this content tomorrow. Students who already got a 100 will be engaging in word problems around this skill, or repeating this lesson with a text at a slightly higher lexile level, or whatever. Let the data inform what you're going to do next and explicitly state it for your admin to see, and you will never struggle with the planning portion of your rubric. On top of that, you're really defining for your administrator that, like, I'm tracking what these kids are doing and I'm teaching based on what they're doing. I am not just blindly following a scope and sequence. I am pulling the data that my kids are giving me every single day and turning around and making sure that they're ready for what we're going to do tomorrow. And if they're not, then I'm working to catch that up, whether it's in small group or repeating the lesson for the whole group or whatever it is. So write that reflection sentence somewhere on your lesson plan. If you click the link in this description, it will take you to my blog post that is basically the transcribed version of this video, essentially. And I have this freebie for you to download, and it has all of the stuff on there. This is basically the template that I've used forever and ever. My team, my very first year, helped me with this. Like, we developed it together, and the three of us still use it to this day. But it's basically just your name, your date, standard, measurable objective, what you're going to be doing in the whole group, small groups, which is where you can jot down notes of the different ways that you're going to approach, maybe jot down some different questions that you're asking, the assessment piece that you're using, and then the reflection, how the kids done the assessment and what that means moving forward. This is when you download it, it is in Google Slides so that you can insert text boxes and type in it, or you can download it as a PDF and just handwrite in it, whatever your preference is. Some people really like to type formal observation notes. The thing about this, though, is you could use this every single day. Just jot down some thoughts about your small group, what you're going to do in the whole group that day, what your goal is for the lesson, how you're assessing it, and how the kids did. And you could have like a whole binder of these. And then when your principal comes in and observes you, it's as simple as just like pulling it out, photocopy it, turn it in, done. Because I believe that the key to not stressing about observations or observed lessons is to just believe that you're teaching well all the time and support that belief with data. Like, I mean, it's good to just feel in your heart that you're good, but if you know that you're teaching to your kids' needs based on the numbers they're producing, no one's gonna argue with you on that. Like, you're just doing your job. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're hitting the standards. You know how your kids are doing with the standards. And then you're repeating that the next day based on the data they gave you the day before. So that's it, y'all. That's how I think you kick observation anxiety to the curb. I hope that helps you. And I hope that you pulled something from this that you're like, oh, I could start working that in pretty easily. And life will be so much easier for me because, you know, I run this simple classroom. My goal is to make your teaching life simpler and not add more things to your plate to do, but instead replace the inefficient things that you've been doing with better habits. So hopefully this alleviates some of the observation anxiety you may be feeling, because it's October and observation season is in like full swing around here. It probably is where you are too. So hopefully that helps. If you like this video, subscribe. I put one out every single week based on my big topic of the week. Last week it was about using planning time more efficiently, so I've got a blog, email, video, all about that. This week we're talking observations, so stay tuned to see what we're going to talk about next week.